Hello and good afternoon and welcome to our last Tea Time SEO before we break for summer. It's been a great and successful
Hello.
And good afternoon and welcome Tea Time session. So I just wanted to say, we have already some people joining, which is great. I just want to say we have two experts today who are going to be talking about e-commerce and how to avoid duplicate content forever, which is very exciting for us. Before we start, does anyone have their tea and cake ready, perhaps? Nearly, I think. I think our speakers, yep, maybe they have imaginary coffee and some water. Perfect. So thank you very much to our speakers, Kristina and Luci, who are joining us today. Great to have you here. We had Kristina on a couple of sessions before, I believe. And Luci was here as well. I think you were May 19th, perhaps, Luci. It was one day I wasn't there.
Wow, that's well remembered.
So really happy to have both Kristina and Luci, are two e-commerce experts, to share about basically how you can actually try and avoid having duplicate content on your site. I'm SEO Joe Blogs here at Authoritas, and we've been running Tea Time SEO since March 30th, actually. We set up this initiative so that we could encourage everyone to take a break, encourage everyone to connect and learn something new. And so far we've had 58 sessions, including today's. We've had 139 speakers and over 500 tips as well, which is phenomenal. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, for our speakers as well, for sharing the insights and giving up their time. It has really meant a lot. We are just taking a quick break over August, and we'll be back in September with some new sessions and new topics as well. So I just wanted to introduce, set the stage really for Kristina and Luci. As I mentioned, Kristina, it's been great. You have been on our Tea Time SEO stage before a few times. You also got involved with Turn Digi, another initiative I was running independently, and really great to have you back. And Luci as well. You and your team from Blue Array and Reading have all taken part in Tea Time SEO. So thank you very much for being here today. And for those of you in the audience, please leave your comments, please ask questions. And if you're enjoying the session, and of course Tea Time SEO, click the like button. I'll pass over to you, Kristina.
Thank you. Yeah, oh my God, you just shared the stats about Tea Time SEO, and that's amazing. I'm blown out how many speakers and tips you had. So yeah, if somebody's watching, this is the first time, go back and see all the videos, because there's so much value there. And it's like my 5th Tea Time SEO. So thank you for having me. And yeah, I'm an e-commerce and technical SEO consultant based in Toronto, and I help businesses to thrive online. And if you want to get free tips delivered to your inbox, you can also subscribe to my SEO Shop Up newsletter, which is completely free. And I'm excited to share some new things today. And also I'm excited to be with Luci here. This is the second time we are together on Tea Time SEO. So yeah, over to you, Luci.
Yeah, awesome. With an e-commerce dream team. So hey guys, I'm Luci. I'm one of the SEO directors over at Blue Array. So as Joe mentioned, there's been a few of us on Tea Time SEO. So it's really nice to be kind of closing up the last one for summer. So at Blue Array, we're a specialist SEO consultancy. We work with a lot of e-commerce brands, as well as brands from kind of all walks of life. Our clients include people like Bowden, and Brand Alley and Photobox. And for me, e-commerce is an area of SEO that I really love. I love getting stuck into it. And then just kind of emerging search trends as well.
Great, thank you very much, Luci. And I just also want to say hello to everyone that's joined. Lawrence, Charlotte, Azim. Azim's also been on the show as well. Georgie too, Chloe, your colleagues Chloe, Kim, and hello, Raf, and everyone else not signed in. Please leave your questions in the chat, and we will have an extended Q&A afterwards. Obviously, this is our last Tea Time SEO. So thank you very much. I'm going to pass over to Kristina to share her tips.
Yep, thank you. By the way, you can hear drilling. I hope you won't, but I have some guys working in another room, so I hope it will be okay. It will be calm and nice. So the first thing that I wanted to share, just general overview of content, basically common examples of duplicate content when it comes to e-commerce websites. And these are, for example, the same product belongs to multiple categories, and it has a category indication in its URL, which brings us to having multiple URLs for the same product. Another example is when a product has many different variations and each of them lives on their own URLs. The next example is when the same category has different URLs. Also, there can be subcategories, which subcategory indication in the URL, and basically also we end up with multiple URLs for the same category, which has the same products. And the last example is when the content is copied from manufacturers. I'm not going to talk about in detail about all of them because Lucy is going to share amazing tips for these examples. What I'm going to talk about is why duplication is bad and how you can actually find the duplicates before you start fixing them. Can I have the next slide, please? So the thing is that content duplication, so Google has this thing as deduplication, right? So it tries to handle duplicate content for you, which is a good thing on the one hand, right? So they take duplicate pages and they basically cluster them together, which is deduplication, right? And they choose which page they would rank, which page they will treat as basically the main variation, the main page. But the problem with this is that you just give everything to someone else, right? You don't. So Google doesn't follow your decision, doesn't follow, for example, canonicals or something like that. They decide themselves, which means that in some situations when you let somebody else decide for you, you might not get something that you wanted in the end, right? So that's why finding and making sure that you remove duplicate content is important, so that you decide how Google treats your website in general, versus you let Google decide and you just don't care. So the next tips, can I get the next slide, please, will be about how to find quick ways, really quick and I would say almost free ways to find duplicate content. There are definitely many fancy ones, but I want to talk about those which are available for everybody right here and right now. So the first one is good old Google Search Console. There is a coverage report, and make sure that you check it and you check the, especially these parts as, I can't read it from here, but yeah, duplicate, I can't remember it by heart, but duplicate content so basically, when you have duplicate content and there are no canonicals, Google will signal this to you. Or when you have a canonical, but for some reason a different page was chosen. This is also worth your attention. And these are very good indications, and you get it directly from Google, which is amazing. You didn't use it, you didn't have it in the previous variant of Google Search Console, Google Webmaster Tools, right? So that's amazing that now it's there. Yep, the next slide would be awesome. The next is duplicate. So basically, when you have duplicate content, the chances are very, very high that the title tags of these pages would be the same, also duplicate. So how I used to do this really quickly is to crawl the website with Screaming Frog, and then sort pages by titles. And then you can easily see, okay, these 3 pages have the same title. It means that most probably they are duplicates. Another variation, if you don't have Screaming Frog, you can use Google Sheets. You can use import XML and import title tag for all the pages, and then just sort by title tags as well. It's yeah, it's just in case if you don't have Screaming Frog, sorry. Yeah, so basically what you need to do is to find duplicate title tags and then check pages. If the pages are not duplicates, okay, then you found another issue of duplicate title tags, and you would want to make sure that they are relevant and unique. So the next way how you can find duplicate content is Google search operators. So it really works well, especially for categories. Like if you have sorting options, right? You sort your products in a category, then you see the indication of like sorting or filter applied to your URL of the category, and then you just use site and basically your domain, and in URL this sort parameter or filtering parameter, and Google will return you the pages which match this search, and these pages are going to be duplicate or new duplicate pages. If you don't have them, amazing. If you do, then it needs attention as well. And my last tip how to find duplicate content, and this actually happened to one of the clients I used to work with. So I one day just found in Google Analytics that they had the same URL, but with a slash and without slash at the end. This is not only e-commerce, and basically that client wasn't e-commerce, but this is not only an e-commerce issue. This is issue across any type of the website. And the problem with this, and that's sometimes people forget about that, and people who are not SEOs, they don't even think about this tiny bit, right, slash at the end. So these URLs, and in this example, contact slash and contact without slash at the end, these are treated as completely two different URLs by Google. So if you have both of them, and both of them are crawlable, both of them have self-referencing canonicals or no canonicals at all, it means that they are duplicate. And well, the best solution would be to have a 301 redirect, or at least a canonical tag pointing to your chosen version. But at the end of the day, you need to catch it first before you fix it. And in Google Analytics, it can be fairly easy. And as you can see here, the contact with slash and contact without slash both have visits, which means that people find these pages somehow. Yeah, so that's basically quick and really inexpensive ways to find duplicate content in e-commerce, and actually not only in e-commerce. So over to Lucy. I saw that she's going to share amazing tips how to tackle this content.
Thank you, Kristina. That was great. So many insights that you shared with us. We'll pass over to Lucy straight away then.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you, Kristina, for the awesome tips. I think actually this will work really nicely because, as Kristina said, first you have to find them, and then you can fix them. So now that we know how to find them, I'm going to talk about some of the kind of key ones and how we can actually fix them. So Charlotte, you'll be pleased to know that this presentation has corgis in it, just like all of my other presentations. So I wouldn't want to disappoint you. So for this one, the tip is, okay, what if we are generating several URLs for the same product? And this is a really common problem with e-commerce, especially when you're using filters for things. So in the example we've got here, we've essentially got products which are face masks. In this example, we have purple face masks that are cotton, and they have corgis on them. So actually, depending on the order in which a user applies those different filters to get down to that product, you can end up with multiple URLs for essentially exactly the same products. So as you can see here, we've got color, material, style, and depending on which order you add those in, you can actually end up with umpteen pages. It's not necessarily just 6. It can be, depending on how many filters you have, it can be umpteen pages for exactly the same thing, which is not what you want. So on the next slide, ... Awesome. So what can we do about it? So one of the best things that you can do is to have a site-wide rule in place. to try and ensure that filters are only ever added in a consistent order. So for example, color, material, style. Now, that might be something that you're actually already doing. For example, if you are dynamically updating your metadata on filtered pages, so you're updating things like your title tag and your H1s, then you might already have the capabilities to do something similar. But essentially what this will mean is where you have got this strict order where things can only be applied in that one particular order, then you've just got the one URL for those products. So that's one of the best ways that you can do it without, or rather the best way that you can do it that will help your crawl budget. You've got a couple of other options. One, of course, is a canonical tag. So you can pick one of those URLs and have that as your master and then canonicalize all of your others up to it. Or you can do a no index tag. Again, so you're choosing one master to index and then you are no indexing all of your other ones. So the second two options, they are going to help prevent duplicate content, but they're not going to help with crawl budget issues because Google will still be crawling those URLs. So if you can go down the route of option one, then generally that's preferred, but there are options depending on your own site and the CMS capabilities as to how to fix that one. All right, so next tip. This is where you might have the same kind of product with very similar attributes or very slight variations. So for example, you might have your face masks and you might have slightly different colors that you offer, or you might have slightly different patterns. Now, again, there's a few ways that you can tackle this, and it's going to be a little bit dependent on your particular product, what you're selling, and what the kind of keyword modifiers are and their search volume. So for example, if we took a face mask and you sold it in light pink and then rose and fuchsia and dusky pink, actually people might not be searching for all of those color variations. They might just search for pink face mask. So in that case, you would be taking whichever one is your kind of master or gives you the best potential in terms of search volume and conversions. And again, you're choosing that as your master, so you're canonicalizing the others up to it. So you can find that out either through search volume data, or you can also look in analytics. So if you've got site search on there, you can see actually what kind of colors people might be searching for and base your decision that way. But it really kind of depends on how popular you think a color or a pattern might be. The other option that you can do, which generally tends to be quite nice from a user perspective, is to allow your users to dynamically select the color that they want directly on your product page. And that doesn't update your URL. So you can usually do this via JavaScript. So they land on the product page and you'll usually have something like the circle icons, and they can just pick between different colors and patterns. And then essentially, oh, the lights have just gone off on me, lovely. So then you've got just the one URL, but you're actually giving users that flexibility and that interactivity to pick the colors that you want. All right, so the next one. So what do you do if your product is, I've got somebody dancing in the background to turn the lights back on for me, thank you. The joys of in an office with sensor lighting. So what do you do if you have a product that is sold on multiple other sites? So in this example, we have got this awesome balloon arch from Ginger Ale. Now, Ginger Ale will sell this balloon arch on their own website, but they're also sold through other retailers like John Lewis, Hobbycraft, and a bunch of different other party suppliers. So again, this is a really common problem with duplicate content. And essentially, there's different ways of tackling it. But what you don't want to do is either give them exactly the same copy that you've got on your own site, or send them nothing, because usually they'll just copy from your site. And the reason for this is because, particularly if you're selling through really big retailers like John Lewis, for example, there's a good chance that that brand will outrank your own website for your own products. And that's not really something that you want. So again, depending on the size of your site and how you want to scale this, you can look at trying to automate it. So you can do things like kind of swapping the description slightly, changing words like kind of pink to fuchsia, party to celebration, sparkly versus glittery. So essentially you're describing the exact same thing, but in a slightly different way. Again, either you can do that manually, or you can try and kind of have a more automated system, but it's really going to depend on how much you think you can get away with. Again, there's going to need to be enough differentiation between what you're writing and what you're giving to other people to really make it valuable. But again, the worst thing that you can do is just send those kind of resellers nothing, because they'll just copy from what you've got. All right, so the next tip we've got, I think this is the last one. What do you do if you are the marketplace site and you sell other people's products? So for example, here we've got Wolf and Badger. These guys sell products from individual designers. And they actually had a few issues with essentially what would happen was the designer would have their own website, which is fair enough. And when they put products onto Wolf and Badger, they would just copy and paste them. So in this instance, the actual kind of the creators, the designers themselves were responsible for creating the product copy, which is actually quite a smart decision in terms of scaling things, because it means you don't have to write them yourself, but it does mean that often there's an issue with duplicate content. So the way that we actually try to get around this is asking those kind of designers when they upload products to the site is to actually give them a templated form to fill in. And the idea behind that is you kind of ask questions around the product itself. So the design story, you know, what is this product about? You know, why is it needed? Why was it created? When? So for example, what seasons does it fit? So I actually have no idea what season is appropriate for fluffy cream slippers with a lobster on them. But the fun thing is you can detach the lobster and wear it as a brooch if that's your thing. But again, with some products, you might write descriptions about how they are amazing for winter or they're great for summer, how they're made, your favorite features of them, some FAQs. So if you're selling a technology product or something that generally is quite involved, you might write about some typical FAQs, how to use the product, how to get the best out of that product. And you might also ask about kind of matching or coordinating items, or how you can make an outfit out of that particular product that you're selling. And then you can include something like a minimum character count. And then by kind of implementing that process, so for every single product that has to be uploaded to the site, if you implement these kind of structures, it means you're generating that unique copy that is only then going to be for your site, that you've got kind of a really good thing, a really good set of details about that item that you can then upload to try and help you stand out amongst all of the other retailers. So it's a really kind of good way of doing it. It will depend again a little bit on how your site is set up and how willing people are to spend the time writing that content. It can be a challenge to actually for people to find the time, particularly again if they're running their own businesses and they're very busy and you're just kind of selling their product for them. That can be difficult to win them over. But generally, if you can do it, then it's a really good way to go to just get rid of the kind of duplicate content across other sites. Cool. I think that might be all the tips. Yes, it is. So hopefully they were useful.
Yes, they were very useful. Thank you very much, Luci. We had lots of insights and lots of different actionable tips that we can go and implement straight away. Yeah, thank you for the corgis. I didn't realize it was a corgi, so I said to Charlotte, "Oh, I don't know if we do have corgis."
Oh, it's always corgis. Oh yeah, Charlotte has sat through quite a few of my presentations, so yeah, she's seen a lot of the corgi goodness.
Well, we have a couple of questions. Well, quite a few questions. I've got a couple as well that's come in. Marat is asking, would you recommend requesting resellers to amend their copy if they lift the content from your own website? So I think this goes back to what you were saying, Luci.
Yeah, you can do, but again, it kind of depends on the reseller. If it's like a small scale reseller, you're much more likely to have success with that. If it's somebody like John Lewis, the chances of them actually taking the time to rewrite it are slim. So in this case, it's really prevention is better than cure.
Yeah.
If you can be proactive and you've actually written something for them. I mean, the best case scenario is that you would write something that's slightly different for all of your resellers. But depending on how many you have, that might not be realistic. But generally, if you can go out to them with something that is different to yours, it really reduces the chance that they're just going to swipe what's already on your site.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, That's I think maybe just laziness sometimes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So follow-up question then from Marit. Would you regularly then therefore check for this external content, this duplicate content? I mean.
Yeah. And actually, it's very easy to do, as kind of Kristina showed with the URL search. You can literally just grab a bit of a product description and chuck it into Google, and then it will come up. So the example with the lobster slippers, I just picked a kind of piece that I thought, okay, yeah, how many people are selling cream lobster slippers? Chuck it into Google, and you can immediately see like who's writing exactly the same thing. So it's helpful to do once in a while. Actually, in a previous life, I used to work with a lot of electricians, and again, because they're out on the job a lot of the time, they don't have much time to dedicate to their websites. So we used to have a real issue with them directly copying and pasting from our manufacturer's site onto their own websites, which of course is doing them no favors because they have got small sites with very limited authority. So it actually kind of became a thing that we would start writing kind of more tailored copy for those guys to use, which kind of prevented them from taking it from elsewhere. So a lot of the time it's just a kind of time and convenience thing that, people just don't have the time to do it. So if you can help them out, then you're kind of both winning.
Okay, some good tips there. And also follow-up question, and then we'll pass over to Kristina. So Charlotte's asking, so wouldn't it really though be better, wouldn't it benefit the resellers if they actually had unique content? Like, why would they copy it?
Yeah, exactly that. So again, it depends on the size of the retailer. For some retailers, again, it's a question of scale and resource. So they might not have people there that will write unique copy. Yes, of course, it will benefit them. But again, it kind of depends on the cogs in the wheel. Some retailers like John Lewis will rank anyway because they've got such authority behind them. So it's definitely beneficial for some of the smaller scale resellers to have their unique copy. So again, that kind of goes into when you sort of onboard people or you're talking to your retailers to actually explain to them the benefits and actually say, this isn't a good idea that you copy from us. So if you notice it happening, you can always kind of send out a friendly email and say, actually, it's kind of in both our interests that the copy is different between us. But again, success rate is, how long is a piece of string? So it's worthwhile trying.
Great. I think it's also an exercise, an education exercise, right? It's not, the resources is a big factor, 100%. But also what I notice is that sometimes people just don't know that it's not a best practice, right? They just copy and they don't think about SEO per se. They don't really understand that they are doing something wrong, and they might actually be having, especially smaller resellers, issues with rankings, and then they go to forums and SEO groups like, what's going on? My website is not ranking. Sephora is outranking my website. But yeah, it happens a lot, and it's a lot of education needed for those people to understand, and then they can invest potentially in more resources to write or rewrite the content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you for adding that part. And also, Kristina, now has a question. So besides the duplicate URLs and page titles, are there ways to check for on-page text duplication with Screaming Frog? I'd be interested to know this too, because I was looking for this.
Yeah, so in Screaming Frog, there is a tab, content tab, and it shows near duplicate, something it's called like that as far as I remember. But yeah, there is a tab in I might post it afterwards on Twitter for that. Yeah, so there is a tab which shows near duplicates because Screaming Frog can also analyze it and show it to you. What other thing that I wanted to also highlight is that sometimes people, well, non-SEOs usually are concerned. Sometimes most people just don't think about duplicate content at all. And sometimes when a person hears about duplicate content, they think, oh my God, so I can't have even like the same navigation on like across the website. So the thing is that even some minor block is the same. I'm not even talking about navigation, but I don't know, footer and something, maybe disclaimer or something else which is relevant for your website is found on all the pages, across the pages, that's also fine if it's not a huge percentage of the whole content. Because how it works is that Google evaluates the whole page, and it tries to ignore those parts of the page which are the same across the website. Basically, like navigation, sidebar, and if you have something like disclaimer or something else important across the whole website, that's fine as well. So Screaming Frog can highlight it, but it's not always a bad thing.
Okay, thank you. And also, I had a question just around, you showed us Google Search Console, which is great, earlier. You gave us an example about the fact that in Google Search Console, they ask for, just find it again, around maybe I'll go back on the slides, but about basically saying these are the alternative pages with rel equals canonical, and these are duplicate pages that don't have rel equals canonical. Mm-hmm. So, where would you start first? I mean, the alternate pages with proper canonical tag, that's a good thing.
Yeah, so it's a good thing, but it still needs to be checked because if things went wrong in the process of so sometimes you can have a canonical tag, but all your internal linking, for example, your sitemaps can link to another URL, and Google can treat this URL as a canonical versus your canonicalized URL. So that's why it's important to go to this tab also. But I would start with duplicate without selected canonical. That would be the first thing that I would do. And next, I usually go through all of these things anyway. But I just highlighted those which are specifically about canonicalization and about duplicate content. Mm-hmm. You're muted.
As well, it's worth looking if, for example, Google's selecting a different page as the canonical as well, because sometimes that can indicate either duplicate content or the fact that oftentimes you might create a page and then kind of forget about it and create another one. And then Google chooses that one that you've just kind of forgotten about as your canonical. And actually, like, generally that's a signal that whatever you have on that page that Google's selecting as canonical, whether that's the on-page content or whether you've got some good links to it, whatever it might be, is a really good place to check as well. Not generally just for duplicate content, but just for the sake of trying to kind of site hygiene and keep the site clean. It's a good one to look at.
Okay, so that's the duplicate without user selected canonical, that one you're referring to.
That's duplicate. Google chose a different canonical than what.
Oh, okay, sorry, it's underneath that. Okay, yeah. Great.
So you've set the canonical and you've said, hey, this is the master, and Google's gone, nah, I'll have this one instead.
Oh, yeah, you have highlighted it as well. Yeah, I just didn't highlight it on the slide. Yeah.
No, that's fine. Why would it do that then, Lucy, if it's going to choose the other one instead?
So generally, there's something usually on the page that Google has selected that in their eyes they think it's better than the one that you've said.
Oh, and also there can be. So I did this experiment some time ago. What I wanted to prove is that, like, how Google treats canonical and no index at the same time, because, like, as you know, you can't use them at the same time. But I just wanted to experiment with this, and what I did, I just created a new page which wasn't, and I set it canonical from existing page to that newly created page, but they were different, and I was like, interesting. Google wouldn't pick up the canonical. Because the pages were different. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why Google can choose another canonical, a different canonical than a user. Because Google, canonical is kind of a hint as well sometimes, and if the content is different, Google can just ignore.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Great, thank you. Well, there's a lot of stuff around canonical. We'll be tagging you afterwards around this. So many tips that you've given away. We will also be sharing the slides later as well. Thank you very much, Luci and Kristina. Does anyone else have any other questions? I think Mara was saying, thank you both for a great session and taking the time to answer all my questions. I just had one last question, really, and it's just what you touched upon about John Lewis. So pretend you are let's say you sell balloons or you sell, party supplies, yeah, and you're not a big company. So you then sell it via John Lewis, or you sell it via, I'm just trying to think of other department stores that are still in business. So you sell it there, and they're ranking higher. It was the case as well where maybe affiliates used to rank higher than your site. How can you really? Is it so bad if they're selling your product that they're ranking higher than you?
Yeah, not necessarily. No. Again, like generally, if you're having to pay a commission to those sites, it's a little bit annoying. But it's not always necessarily bad. It just can be a bit frustrating to not have users, because again, it might be the case that on your site you are able to upsell other products to that user that maybe there's not that functionality on a site like John Lewis, or like you can kind of offer like a better customer experience. You've got more information on there. You're generally a trusted source. So sometimes it can be frustrating that you're not kind of driving that traffic because you might lose out on other sales. But generally speaking, I mean, so long as people are buying your product and buying plenty of it, then happy days, really. But again, I guess it comes down to kind of owned versus earned, if you like. So on your site, you have control of what you can have. On other people's sites, you have much less control. So generally, it's a hard slog, particularly if you're a small site and you have these kind of big resellers. Even though they're selling your product, there's a lot of work there to do in terms of brand building, kind of brand exposure, getting backlinks, and all of those things. But yeah, it's not necessarily bad, but it kind of depends on your site and the products you sell.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think a good analogy of this would be paid ads versus on Google versus organic traffic, because, well, in this case, a person ends up on your website anyway, but still, if you have like branded traffic, you also bid on your brand traffic. So if still a client can buy for you, but you're paying a premium for that. So like with paid ads and organic traffic, people will still come to your website, but you are paying a premium for paid ads. And in this situation with resellers, people will still buy your product, not from your website, but your product, and you will have to pay commission. And as Luci highlighted, so many more important things, like you control this, and you can also you can upsell. You can then put the person in a funnel and do all the magic behind this, while if it's bought by a reseller, you can't do anything, basically.
Yes, good point. Okay, well, thank you very much, Kristina and Luci, for sharing your tips. So Kristina's on Twitter, Azerchick, and Luci's on LinkedIn, Luci_Wood. So please connect with them if you have not already. As I mentioned earlier today, we do have we've had quite a good run, a very good run of Tea Time SEO. We started at March 30th, and we've had 139 speakers, including today's session, 58 tea times, and over 500 different tips on all aspects of SEO, which has been great. We're going to take a break for next month, but we will be back in September with maybe perhaps a slightly different format, all to be finalized and then shared. But we will be looking still for speakers, so please let us know if you would like to be on the Tea Time SEO stage, like Kristina, Luci, Kim's been on there as well, Georgie, Azim, Marit. A lot of these people that, thank you also for attending, that have been in the audience have also been on stage. So I can't say thank you enough, really, for everyone for supporting this initiative, getting involved, sharing, and coming to the sessions, and of course to our speakers for sharing all those tips. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you in September.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Just gonna end the broadcast. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll see you in September, and look out for the news on Twitter and LinkedIn. And we'll be tagging you two, Kristina and Luci, on LinkedIn and Twitter. So please continue the conversation there. We've just ran out of time for today. So see you guys in September. Have a good August.